Hi, Denny. I can see you're
Hi.
already here.
All right.
Hello there. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi.
And Hans is here as well. Hi, Hans. How are you?
Hi.
Hello, Dan. Hello, Danny.
Hello, Hans.
So, Hans, just whilst we wait for Scott, I think Scott's coming as well, and obviously we have Denny up here as our first respondent straight away. But just to maybe kick things off, hi Scott, you're here as well now. Hi there. How are you doing? Can you hear us okay?
Hi, everyone. Yes, perfectly fine.
Perfect.
Hey, Denny.
Hi, Scott. Oh,
What I will do then, I'm going to leave you guys to it. So Hans and Scott, you're obviously going to be running this session. As you can see, we already have Denny up here as our first respondent, and we'll be bringing more people up, and we already have quite a few people in the queue, so we're bringing them up shortly. But yeah, Scott and Hans, I'll pass over to yourselves, and yeah, looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts.
Hans, do you want to say the first few words?
Sure. Let me start then. Thank you, Dan, first of all, for organizing this fantastic conference in these challenging times. I mean, really, nothing seems to be able to stop you guys, and well done. I do hope, though, that we'll be able to see each other in person again next year. And no matter how great this whole virtual thing has been, it's still good and nice to see people in person. I mean, just a couple of thoughts from me. I mean, first of all, I think we had some really interesting discussions over the past few days. And as always, you know, with this great group of people, some really good presentations on what's going on in the region. I think there was a lot of focus also on the results of WSD19 and what it all means for different spectrum users. And you can really see that the different groups are already gearing up toward WSD23. And I think it's safe to say that it won't get boring. But I think for me, what was most striking was that several speakers actually mentioned how the current pandemic is driving digitalization, and with it, the need to reduce the digital divide. I think people with little or no access to the internet are actually left even more behind during a pandemic like this. So for me, session 3 on Monday was really one of the highlights. I could really sense that there's real desire by the industry to actually collaborate and to find solutions. But I think this also requires support from the government and quite incentive. The one potential solution I can see is that you can reinvest some of the proceeds from spectrum auctions and spectrum awards and license fees to help connect the unconnected. And this is exactly what the US is doing. I mean, the FCC is now launching the World Digital Opportunity Fund, which is a reverse auction where operators can compete for subsidies to cover hard-to-reach areas with broadband. And running a reverse auction like that obviously ensures that you get the most cost-efficient solution to cover a particular area. And it also means that you drive subsidies down, compete them down to the minimum that is required. I can really think that I really see that this has enormous potential, and I hope there will be similar initiatives across Asia Pacific. That's at least my hope. But without further ado, I think Scott, what were your thoughts?
Well, just a couple of comments before we get on to our other have your say participants. I think my comments, given having worked on the ITU's COVID response and looking at the across-the-board industry response, I think as an industry, we really have done a pretty good job on actually meeting the needs. Now, the areas that don't have service, we've still got the gaps. So I think the takeaways for me on this conference are the need for more coverage, the need for more spectrum, and that we need to move faster to 4G and 5G as part of that process. So let me keep my comments very short, and I think Dr. Denny is the first person who's on the list. So over to you, Dr. Denny.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Hans. I think for me, I always enjoy this conference, and always new idea, always new things. And for me, it's 4 days very, very helpful. I would love to better have a face-to-face meeting rather than a virtual meeting, right? Hopefully next year we will have that. So I think it's true that to digital pandemic, this is push us, the Ministry of ICT, and I don't know whether it's some blessing in disguise that the ICT become the priority for the president now, because the school, student cannot go to school, and the only way we going to the internet. And hospital, you need to have some solution for that. So I think before all the budget is coming from the company, from the industry, not like other sector like transportation. The government give some subsidy on that. So I think now I think we successfully try to persuade Minister of Finance how we can get from spectrum fee fund that we collect, we can contribute to finance the incentive to the industry, whatsoever for a backbone and backhaul, and how to have more coverage. But of course, the more spectrum, I think the challenge, as Scott mentioned, and hopefully that's part of the fund that we can also contribute to have more broadband service to the country. Thank you.
That's great, Dr. Denny. Next speaker, I think it's that we can't see the names, unfortunately. So, but I think it's from Ericsson.
Hakan Olsen.
Yeah, Hakan, yes. We can't see the name. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. No, I think it has been a really interesting experience with this. It's quite a complex conference in a virtual environment and for 4 days now. I think it's been working extremely well. And maybe this actually gives us some opportunities for future. I mean, there are pros and cons, as some of you already said, physical versus online meetings. But maybe when we are back to a more normal life, maybe we should consider how to use the best out of these two worlds. Mm-hmm. Also, I think there's a lot of information shared during these 4 days, and I like the opening ceremony where both APT and ITU made it clear that the importance of communications in a crisis like this, and for now and future. I think it was Ms. Arivan that also said something that it's important that we have enough spectrum resources during this crisis, and this is maybe a wake-up for a call for many of the regulators that there is a need to make sure that we have for the future as well for a crisis like this. There was also also what I liked a lot was the national roadmaps. It gives a lot of valuable information for companies like the vendors and operators on how to license to MNOs for 5G, and not the least the presentation from Mr. Bui Long from ARFM here in Vietnam regarding the situation here. And you know, it has been a very long discussion we have had in Vietnam, and now finally they have a very good way forward. So I was very happy to see that. And then maybe the highlight, perhaps, was the presentation by Stefan Sele from Colliago about the importance of low license fees that can benefit consumers and business for better mobile broadband rather than access to the government. And also the showcase. He had one 45-minute showcase where he presented the needs for using 6 gigahertz frequency bands for licensed IMT. I think that's all from me and Ericsson, and thank you very much to the organizers and all the participants for contributing to this great success, I would say. Thank you.
Thanks, Hakan. And look, I must say one of the things that I think that's more likely to happen after this conference is that if we do get together, which I hope we do in a physical way, I think there's going to be a broadcast element to it to bring in even more people to see the proceedings. So more work for the organisers, I think, as part of the process. Maybe if I can just jump in and also then hand over to Mohammed, who is the next on the list, to give us a little rundown on his thoughts on the conference.
Thanks, Scott, and good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, wherever you are in part of the world. Just want to reiterate what my previous colleagues mentioned. I think it's been a very good conference, lots of interesting slides and presentations. Some of my key takeaways that I've taken note of is the polls were quite interesting, actually. One particular poll that showed what would be the dominant technology for the medium to foreseeable future being 4G, which brings me to the interesting observation I've noticed that when we talk about spectrum, yes, I think spectrum is part of the solution, but it's not the answer to everything. I think from my observation that there is a lot of spectrum that's still available to be licensed and has not been used. An interesting observation also when I compare, for example, this conference to similar conferences in other regions, is that there is different approaches to 5G deployment across the world. Each region has its own unique requirements and its own market demands and economics, and therefore that has transpired into different approaches in different regions. In this region in particular, I've noticed that there is a lot of emphasis on trying to adopt a balanced approach to also protect the incumbent services as well. But we're having this conference in the backdrop of COVID-19. A lot of the online physical meetings have been transformed to online meetings. We're all sitting in our comfort homes or our offices privately, using a connection means that we've not discussed throughout this conference, which is Wi-Fi. So my kind of question, if I may, to everybody is, do we really think that the spectrum needs is purely for terrestrial 5G, or there is a need also to cater for the Wi-Fi demand? Because I think a lot of the offloading of the traffic for the last really been done over the Wi-Fi network, which has done a lot of the heavy lifting. And the second observation is about rural connectivity. This was something that didn't come across to me in the presentation on urban environments, macro cells deployment, when we talk about millimeter waves as well. But how do we bridge the digital divide and the rural connectivity aspect didn't come across from me. So that's kind of my summary of the last 4 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. I think you're absolutely right. Wi-Fi's got a very big role to play, and maybe there's not enough representation of that important piece in the jigsaw at a conference like this. So I totally agree with your thoughts there. We've got to move on though to the next speaker. I'd like Guillaume Mascot from Nokia to give us his thoughts.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever, where you are. Thank you again to Global Forum and MCI from Indonesia, APT and ITU. I think it's quite interesting because, as Aken said, there were a lot of material and knowledge that has been shared during the last 4 days, maybe more than I've never seen currently. So I think there is some good point when we are doing that remotely, but I really hope that we will see each other pretty soon, physically as well. I would say I will not take too long because I think there is a lot of people that want to as well share their input. What struck me, again, it was on day one from the 5G Vision panel, a point from Stefan from Koreago. And in fact, it's a quote from the minister in Bangladesh saying that we have missed all the industrial revolution. Let's try not to miss the fourth industrial revolution. And for me, it was really something striking. And I hope they will not miss it, to be honest. So we have seen, even during this COVID-19 time, that the connectivity is paramount. And now that with future network, it will be even more critical. And we have seen so many examples in the showcase or even when we talked about the use cases. So it will be critical for citizens to stay connected, such as we are doing right now, to work and to be even secure by themselves. So, and for the industry, it will be a new type of application like digital twin. I think we have seen that the difficulty for every industry was to stay working. So I think one thing that we are currently learning is that, the system can fail. So we need maybe try to see what we can bring to make the system work in case there is a disruption. And I think that's one of the key takeaway where a lot of people were taking for granted that it works. Where from one month to another, we have seen a lot of things that our mind changed, and our perception of something that was usual is not. So I think we have to think about what is critical and how 5G can help, and 5G and connectivity. So what it can be for 5G, for public safety, and even have this kind of disruption when we develop business cases. Like I said, like digital twins for industry. So I think what I see is we know that planning would be paramount. And as Stefan said, don't think about the money, don't think about the budget. It's really something that we have seen what it could be if you think only about the budget. But think about the added value, the socioeconomic input and output that you could have. And I think it was Amir in the last session that clearly said, even hire a consultant that will give you, this is what you will get if you invest wisely in spectrum. And I think we should not, I'm sorry for the consultant. We should not hire a consultant to show the socioeconomic benefit for the government. They should have that in mind, because this is what we have observed right now. But we need the consultant to say it again. So I would say the top priority is to continue and to accelerate what's going on, and the different spectrum plan, and even to stimulate use cases based on what we have experienced. And one last thing, and I think it occurred in every country, where the notion of essential services. I think for lots of countries, they discovered that, the network needs to be maintained, and we need to have people on the ground. And I think in some countries, they understood, yes, we need to have some people working on the network to ensure that it will stay smooth, where for others it was complicated to understand that. So I think even if we have said that in several conferences, the essentiality of our service, I think that unfortunately we had to get this crisis that for the government to say, the network is not running by itself. So we need to ensure that it can cope. And if there is a failure, that people, so human, have to come on board as well. So thank you again to the organizer.
Thank you, Guillaume. I echo your thoughts on Bangladesh, and I think they're really at a crossroads there. And there was an excellent presentation by the CITC in Saudi Arabia, which really shows what you can do if you bring how much you can achieve in a very short space of time if you just bring the spectrum to the market. You leapfrog a whole bunch of countries. You suddenly have really good services. The mobile operators are just waiting for it to get their hands on it and to deploy it, as long as you make sure that you allocate it at a reasonable price. Totally agree. Thank you very much. We've got to move on now. I'd like to ask Christian Gomez from the GSMA to give us his thoughts on the.
Thank you, Hans. Is my audio okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, Scott.
How are you, sir?
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at the closing session. Three things that were quite outstanding for me was the participation of the region in the conference. And I think regardless of being in the COVID-19 mode of operation, I think the attendance of the conference shows that there's a lot of interest in across the region in solving the infrastructure issues and improving infrastructure. I heard lots of comments as well about strategy. Should we go for mid-range fares or should we go for coverage bands, or should we put emphasis on millimeter wave? And I think throughout the different forums and discussions, we have seen that we need all three for all three types of environment and needs. So rural has a particular need for infrastructure, metropolitan as well, and then high density population areas. So I think it's important for countries not to drop the ball in any of these three areas, because there will be benefits from reducing spectrum in the three spectrum ranges. And when it comes to coverage, which is one aspect of Asia Pacific, which is very sensitive because it's very expensive, and we also have quite large countries, coverage is not just about reducing the sub-gigahertz spectrum, 700 megahertz. We know it's very important, and it's coming along in a lot of countries, and that needs to happen faster. As we have learned with COVID-19, access to mobile broadband is very important, and it's what's keeping the economies afloat. So those processes for 700, for example, they need to be accelerated. We don't know for how long this is going to go for, and I think it is evident, that as Hans mentioned, we need to take care of any form of divide when it comes to connectivity, and we need that coverage layer to be available. On the other hand, there is also the aspect of policies for coverage. So it's not just about the frequency, but it's also about how can we make it happen. So spectrum pricing is still an issue in the region, and now that we need more coverage, we need to make sure that this doesn't become a barrier for improving the services and deploying more mobile out to the regions. And then exploring maybe some models as well. For example, the French government, they, when it came to renewing spectrum in the lower band, they basically renewed it for free in exchange of a commitment from operators to expand rural coverage.
Sure.
So there are different models to achieve this. So it's not just about spectrum releasing, but it's about everything else that comes with it, including the licensing, including the policy around achieving objectives for connectivity. So with that, I'd like to close my comments and hand the floor back to Hans to continue the discussion. And I thank you all for attending this great conference. And I thank Pak Denny in Indonesia and Indonesia for being the host, although we could not be there. But it is great that Indonesia was part of the organizing team for this, especially for them that they are doing a lot of work when it comes to spectrum, and we wish them well.
Thanks, Christian. And you're absolutely right. So thank you very much to Dr. Denny and his team at SDPI for their work, I know, on this conference. And I was certainly there when the decisions were made originally, to actually postpone it. And then thankfully they were very able to work and make it a virtual conference. But you're absolutely right about I think COVID, when we originally did some work, we thought that the first phase was going to be 6 months. I think it was a total, it's totally wrong. It's going to be a lot longer than that. And I think your comments about coverage and that are really, really important. I think the only thing we did get right, I might say, is we thought that wearing a mask would become a new fashion. And unfortunately, that's become a global phenomenon very, very fast. So, but thank you as well for the GSMA for all of your advocacy and pushing and pushing governments, I think, to realise the value of the spectrum in this space. Let me move over to Stefan from Colliego, and he's contributed very well to the conference, and I'm sure he's got some last good words for us.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Scott. As always, a great conference, and we saw some very informative presentations on 5G and also bringing 5G to rural areas. And the conference is evidence that in Asia-Pacific countries are amongst the leaders, such as China, Japan, Korea, not least because of excellent spectrum management in those countries. However, the region also contains the world's most slow-moving countries from a spectrum assignment perspective, including India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Indonesia, which between them account for 2.1 billion of the world's population. And spectrum is the one resource that is available equally in all countries, developed and developing, and if used for mobile broadband, could be a factor which contributes to reducing the development gap between developed and developing countries. However, over the past 4 Asia-Pacific Spectrum Conferences, I observed that the broadband connectivity gap between developed and developing countries increases rather than decreases, because policymakers in slow-moving countries either leave spectrum sitting idle or take no action to move incumbents such as legacy broadcasters. So it was particularly good that in the opening presentation of the conference, Arvind Horansangi, the Secretary of the Asia-Pacific Telecommunication APT, referred to COVID-19 as a wake-up call. And I hope that the politicians in these slow-moving countries, and I think the fault lies with the politicians, not with the spectrum managers, that they heed that wake-up call and move ahead. And this concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much, Stefan. You're absolutely spot on, and yeah, I totally echo your thoughts there. Let's move on to Jay Chen from Huawei. Give us his thoughts.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening. Actually, it's a very good event, and I'm so privileged and feel great being in this event and also speak here. I would like to congratulate to the organizer, the Forum Global, the ITU, the APT, and the Ministry of Communication and the Information of the Republic of Indonesia for organizing this very successful events. And Huawei is proud to be one of the associate partners and to be part of this global event. Actually, in the last 4 days, we have witnessed many countries across this region are on the way or plan for the 5G deployment, sharing the thoughts and the perspective on how potentially the new services and applications could be unleashed. For example, enabling the cloud VR, the cloud gaming service for consumers, the online education, digital healthcare, smart city, intelligent ports, and so on, for home and the vertical industries, are now opening up the new opportunities and become realistic to mobile operators and across all the players. Today, actually, the new spectrum planning with the sufficient and the large continuous bandwidth has become the industry common requirements. It can improve 10 times the user speed and the 10 times investment efficiency. Above and beyond, technology neutral and the national licensing are essential for the mobile operators towards the catering the variety of the cutting-edge services and the technology, as well as bringing the certainty for investment. And thanks to great efforts of regulators across this region to ensure and utilize uniformly harmonized frequency spectrum across the region, such as using the harmonized and the uniform C-band 3.5 gigahertz, TDD 2.6 gigahertz, and 2.3 gigahertz as a 5G prime spectrum, and then releasing other bands as that to meet different requirements of service scenario. At the meantime, releasing the low band such as 700 megahertz to provide the 4G coverage improvement, bridge the digital divide between urban and the rural area. It benefits and brings all citizens across the region the perspective of tomorrow for moving ahead towards a universal and leading digital economy region. Lastly, we are from Huawei as the telecom vendor is committed to keep innovating and cooperating with regulators, operators, and the industry players to deliver affordable, valuable, advanced, and intelligent digital services. Connect the unconnected, exploring the new possibilities, and bring the digital to every person, home, and organization for a fully connected, intelligent world. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay. That's really, really excellent. And I know the strong role that Huawei plays in partnership in the region in making affordable, high-speed internet services available to Asia, which is Huawei's home. And I know that some of your kind words there about regulators will be appreciated, because working and partnering with all stakeholders is really part of what the industry needs to do. So thank you very much. Moving over to the next speaker is Bharat Bhatia from the ITU APT Foundation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Scott. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. And this is a new mantra that we have learned in this COVID days, that you are able to interact with people all around the world. Somewhere is morning, somewhere is afternoon. I think these 4 days have been very, very extensive. I think as many speakers previously also mentioned, there's a lot of information that has been shared. There's a lot of good points that have been made, a lot of wonderful presentations. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just want to highlight 3 points which for me were great takeaways. And those are the areas I think we have been trying to push here with Government of India as well. And my first point, I think they made a number of sessions, right from the opening session to other sessions, is the importance of low-cost spectrum. I think as much as we continue to say this, the 5G spectrum has really brought the need for really low-cost spectrum, because without that, we are not getting anywhere. So we here in India have been pushing for a zero starting fees for auctions for 5G. That instead of setting very high entry price, the starting price for auctions for 5G, we should start at a zero game, that let the market find the right market price rather than starting with a very high. And because of that, 700 megahertz, for example, in India has been lying for last 4 or 5 years. Price was so high that there were no takers. So I think having a new paradigm for a low cost spectrum price to initiate the auction, I think is one of the most important, not just in India, but many countries. And I think we should continue to push that agenda. The second point, which came in my session also, and also in some of the other sessions, is the role that satellites are going to play. The satellites, both LEO, MEOs, and GEOs, working together with 4G and 5G, trying to connect the next 4 billion people. I think there are large population which is still missing the connection, still missing the broadband, still missing the internet. So those 4 billion people, I think they need to be connected, and I think satellites are going to play a big role. There is the WRC 23 agenda on HAPS IMT, which is going to be very important, and that could really push connectivity in a big way. But I think the whole industry needs to work together in addressing the WRC 23 agenda as well as bringing satellites and terrestrial together in some way. I think that's a key takeaway for me, but also I think is something the whole industry needs to think. And the third and last point that I want to share, which came yesterday also and today also, and Amir put it very nicely in one of his slides, the role that 5G is going to play for the vertical sector, for the industries, for the private, for the small area licenses. 5G is a game changer. It cannot continue in the same way an operator-based national systems as have been seen in 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. For 5G, we need to come up with a different licensing policy for local area licensing. And that is where the industrial needs come into play in a big way. So 5G is going to play a big role in industries, in utilities, airports, seaports, factories. Remember the number 56, which is coming up with 5G factory. So I think there is a whole need for coming up with a new policy for 5G regulations. The same operator-based system is not going to work. So I think many operators are already doing it. I know UK is done, Germany is done, US has done, the CBRS and others. And I think we need to move that on. We have been pushing Indian government in that direction. So those are basically my three major takeaways from this conference, but wonderful. I think great job done by Dan and Patu. Thanks to Indonesian government support and the Bangladesh very well. The Secretary General of APT, Ms. Arivan, gave very good points, and of course, the IC of the BR, Mario, spoke very well about how WRC is going to come up, how it's going to help in the next cars. So my point, very, very successful conference, and thanks to everybody. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for your 3 points. I think we all agree about having affordable spectrum as part of the process, and the WRC 23 process is really important. On the enterprise one, I think we've got a challenge, which is not part of this conference, is most of the telecoms talent inside Asia is inside the telcos. So we can talk about enterprises running their own networks and all the rest of it, but it's not for this conference, which is focused on spectrum. But if we're going to see this proliferation of use of spectrum outside the MNOs and other carriers, there's going to have to be a lot more thinking about skill sets and about training and all the rest of it, because I suspect that the repository across Asia really is in the MNOs as part of that process. Let's turn now to Chris Wolford from Ofcom for his end remarks.
Thanks very much, Scott. 2 points from me. Firstly, great conference. First point as well is that I think we all know that APT, Asia Pacific, is incredibly diverse in terms of the makeup of the region. I think one of the points I would make is that, and one of the things I've taken away from this conference is just the range of different initiatives that are being taken across Asia Pacific in terms of spectrum management. And the point I'd like to make is that that's really great. It's really good to see all these different initiatives that are being undertaken. And I think sometimes we can get a little bit sort of caught up in looking for the perfect solution. And Saudi Arabia were on my panel. It was absolutely great to hear about what they're doing in terms of refarming. It's incredibly impressive. But that's worked brilliantly in Saudi Arabia. But that doesn't mean that that's the solution we should all be following. We will need to adapt. We will need to try and do whatever works in the areas that we're working in. And sometimes that will mean accepting something which isn't absolutely perfect, but is the best model we can under the circumstances we've got. And that we shouldn't get too hung up sometimes on some of the ideal solutions, the large contiguous blocks. We should do what we can, but sometimes we're not going to be able to get that perfect solution. And we just get what we can out of it. And I think seeing this range of initiatives is really good in respect. The second point I was going to make just actually builds on that, the point you were making about skill sets and enterprises. And I think the world we're living in is becoming increasingly more complex. And the diverse range of uses of spectrum is something which is only going to continue to get more and more complicated. And in some respects, that makes our jobs even more challenging. But equally, for the role of a spectrum regulator, I think at the heart of it, it actually remains quite simple. I mean, we should certainly think creatively and explore, solutions that fit, as I was just saying. But actually, at the core of the responsibilities for a spectrum regulator is to get spectrum out there, in a way in which it can be used, which is around minimum constraints, to follow principles of technology neutrality as far as we can, and to give maximum flexibility to the industry to innovate, to use spectrum in whatever innovative ways they can. And I think that's still the core message that I would take away from this conference. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. You're absolutely right. Pragmatism is certainly required, and what works in one country may not work in another. And CITC is certainly an extreme example. I mean, they're looking to make a lot more spectrum available in the next 4 years. That may not be possible in other countries, but there's certainly some laggards in the region, which we should definitely be looking to make more spectrum available now as well. In particular, as Stefan's already mentioned, the likes of India, who have released the 700. You look at Pakistan, you look at Bangladesh. That's basically still almost like a 3G. They're still stuck in the 3G sort of era in terms of the spectrum that they've released. So you're absolutely right. Getting the spectrum out quickly, especially the kind of bands that we all know work and have a good ecosystem, is actually there's nothing that should stop a regulator now to release that. As you said, technology neutral basis, absolutely. So thank you very much for your comments. We'll move on now to Agustina Linares from Anatel. Please give us your
Hello. Hello, good early morning from Brazil to everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So during this conference, we saw excellent presentations covering all aspects of spectrum management, discussing past, present, and future issues related to spectrum management. There are some takeaways I would like to stress. So the importance of balanced spectrum availability in low, mid, and high bands, and it should be released in the right moment, not too early, not so late. So the protection of incumbent services is necessary, but should not be treated as overprotection. Spectrum auction is an excellent way to increase the mobile coverage and comply with public telecommunications policies. The coverage costs with terrestrial services increases very fast to cover the last 10% of population. Satellites are very important to guarantee connectivity anywhere. To solve digital divide, the combination of different technologies and applications should be used. There are sectors that have money, that are interested to implement wireless technologies, but do not have access to spectrum. Therefore, it's essential to make spectrum available to private networks as well, in order to boost Industry 4.0. Increasing broadband coverage, throughput, and connectivity increases economic productivity, which is reflected in the GDP. There are many other points that could be listed here, but the main message I would like to give to regulators, no matter if you are in a high-ranking professional or not, you can make the difference in your country through a good spectrum management regulation. That's why it's essential to be very updated, because the time between international discussion and bring the solution to the market is decreasing. And to start and conclude a new regulation process may take some years. In Brazil, the average time is 2 years, and some additional time is necessary to reflect this decision in the market. So thank you again for Europe for this opportunity, and I hope next time in person we can change our views. And please, everyone, please keep safe, and hope to see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and really appreciate your participation in the conference. And, you know, it's just important, I think, in Asia Pacific to get the views from global, you know, whether it's from Latin America, from Europe, from Africa, from North America as part of the process. And I think we're in a global spectrum world, and, you know, picking up some of those messages and understanding that some of the challenges that we have are country, region, and global, and some of the solutions where we can learn from other people and other countries and what they've done, I think is really important. You know, we can learn from that and then customize for individual country markets to achieve, you know, the coverage issue or the affordability issue, or driving the economy and enterprises as part of that process. Let me pass lastly over to Amir Riaz from the ITU for his closing comments.
Thanks, Scott. I think I will reiterate what you have said, that maybe we are in different regions, divided into different regions, and under ITU in region 1, 2, 3, which might be, and the allocations are different. But what we can replicate are the different licensing regimes, which might be good strategies that are applicable in different across the regions. For example, the innovative ideas that Ofcom has initiated on providing access to, in the local area, the licensing in the local area to the verticals, and also reusing the spectrum in the rural areas if the national operators are not using it. So these are the ideas which go across the regions. We also very much liked in our earlier case studies that were presented, for example, the successful refarming from Saudi Arabia. So in that sense, it's very interesting that there are some things that are applicable in our Asia Pacific region, which is very, geographically widespread, and the issues are very different in different countries. So in that sense, I think this conference has been a great success, that many new ideas have been shared and which are applicable somewhere in some countries in Asia Pacific, because we are so much diverse. So I think in that sense, it has been a very good opportunity for everyone to listen, to understand, and we hopefully see how we could implement that in the coming future. Scott?
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Amir. Look, you're absolutely right, and your colleagues summed it up very, very well about build back better as part of the process, and I think that's what we've got to do as part of this process. And we felt the challenge of COVID, but what we've done is we've used the opportunity through what we sell, the telecommunications network, to actually learn and to build, and not just accept the situation, but to build and to try and make sure that what we're offering and what we're communicating is still up to date on spectrum, and then we learn from each other as part of that process. I don't know, you want to say anything else, Hans, before? I can see Dan's already joined us. That must be the close up, but over to you.
Yeah. No, I've already spoken off, and I'll Dan to start.
Perfect.
Well, thank you very much, Dan.
Hopefully you get a little rest for the next few days, but an impressive effort from what I've seen, and the technology works, but let's all get back together and share as well on the technology in the future. So thank you very much, and terima kasih as well from Indonesia.
Very true. Scott, Hans, thank you so much for running that session, and I think this could be the start of a whole new double act. So I think the two of you are coming together for our post-event podcast, which I think you're going to be hosting as well. So this could be a whole new thing. So, but thank you guys, that's really appreciated. Say that again, sorry.
Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito.
That's it. Spectrum's answer to that. So that's very true. So
looking forward to that.
Thank you all. Yeah, we're looking forward to that as well. And Amir, I think it's very apt to have you up here as our last speaker of the day as well, because we really appreciate everything that you do along with the team at ITU, and the big part that you play in supporting the event and the success of the event. So Amir, thank you so much for everything as well. So really appreciate it. So that's about it. We've had 4 packed days, and hopefully you all agree. We've had some really interesting discussions across a wide range of different bands, different topics. And I hope that everyone out there was able to take advantage of all the various interactive areas of the platform as well. So we had the exhibition area running, we had the one-to-one networking areas. So I hope you're able to take advantage of that. And just a quick note on the networking areas. For those of you who did use those to make new connections, you'll receive an email tomorrow with the details of all the connections that you made, and that'll allow you to follow that up with those individuals after the event. So that'll come through tomorrow. So just to wrap up, I wanted to mention a few thank yous to some of the various organizations and people who've actually made this event possible. So first of all, I wanted to again thank all of our sponsors and partners for the support of this event. First of all, to ITU, to APT, and our virtual hosts, the Ministry of Communication and Informatics of Indonesia. So as I mentioned at the start of the event, we really hope that the global situation has improved by this time next year, and we're able to take you up on your very kind invitation for us to bring this conference to Indonesia in person. So it's something that we would definitely love to do. And thank you as well to all of our industry partners and sponsors. And again, we really do appreciate the support that all of you provide us for the event. A huge thank you to all of our speakers, panelists and moderators across the 20 sessions we've had over the 4 days. We've had 10 plenary sessions, 10 showcase sessions, so a lot's been going on, and we really do appreciate all of your participation and involvement. And I think we've had some fascinating discussions, and thankfully, just as important, we've had very few technical issues as well, which is a huge relief to all of us here. So we do really appreciate all of your involvement and the time that you've given us both at the event, but also in the build-up through the various technical rehearsals and this and that have taken place. I think we all realize it takes a lot more to both organize and participate in a virtual event, and we do appreciate everyone's time for that. Big thank you to all of you out there who've participated at the event, both via the event platform itself, but also those of you who've been watching via Twitter or YouTube. I think we've now broken the 1,300 mark, I was just told. So we've had more than 1,300 people who participated across the various sessions, which really is amazing. And thank you everyone who got involved, particularly those of you who've just participated now in the Have Your Say session, and also those who put the questions and chat up in the chat room. So contributions that you guys make out there in the audience has also been a big part of the event and given us a truly interactive discussion during each session. So thank you all very much. And a final thank you. I wanted to save the final thank you to my fantastic colleagues in the Spectrum team here at Forum Global. So to Lula, Kate, James, and to Jordan. So once again, guys, the work that you've all done to bring everything together with the event has been fantastic and really is appreciated. And I think I said this after the European conference, but I really do mean it. I couldn't ask for a better team to work with on all of these events. So thank you, guys. And finally, just to completely wrap up, I wanted to mention the next few events that we have coming up as part of this Global Spectrum series. So all at the moment, as you can imagine, will be taking place virtually. So we have the Sub-Sahara edition of this conference, which is going to be from the 14th to the 17th of September. We then have the Americas edition, which is going to be the 12th to the 16th of October. And before the end of the year, we're also going to have Latin American and the CIS editions as well. And details of those will be confirmed very shortly. But we'll keep you all updated with those and really hope to see you all again at those events very soon. So with that, thank you all so much for your participation. Stay safe, look after yourselves. And as I said, we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
Dan. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.